Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova and watched the stars through the main window. His ship had been traveling through space for 3 months now, looking for new worlds and life forms. The crew was getting tired, but they all knew their job was important. Jake looked at the control panels where his team was working hard. Dr. Lisa Parker sat at her science station, studying readings from nearby planets. She was the ship's expert on alien life forms, though they had not found any yet. Her blonde hair was tied back, and she wore the standard blue uniform that all crew members used. Lisa had joined this mission because she believed they would find something amazing out here in the deep parts of space. Carlos Rodriguez worked at the engineering station, keeping all the ship's systems running well. He was a tall man with dark hair who could fix anything that broke on the ship. Carlos had grown up fixing machines, and now he used those skills to keep them alive in the cold emptiness of space. He liked his job because every day brought new problems to solve. Amy Chun sat at the communications desk listening for any signals from other ships or alien races. She was young but very smart with languages and technology. Amy could speak 5 different Earth languages and hoped to learn alien ones too if they ever made contact. Her black hair fell over her shoulders as she worked with the radio equipment. Terra Nova was not a big ship, but it had everything they needed for a long trip. It carried 40 crew members and enough supplies for 2 years. The ship was painted white with blue stripes and had large engines that could take them very far from Earth. Jake was proud to be its captain, even though space travel could be dangerous. They were now in the Kepler system, looking at different planets and moons. Most of what they found was just rocks and ice, but Lisa kept hoping they would discover something special. The mission leaders on Earth had told them to be very careful and report everything they saw. Jake made sure his crew followed all the safety rules. Amy suddenly looked up from her station with wide eyes. She had detected something strange on her instruments. The readings showed energy patterns that did not match anything in their computer files. Amy called Jake over to look at what she had found. The energy was coming from what looked like a large group of asteroids. Jake studied the readings and felt excited. This was exactly the kind of thing they had come out here to find. He told Carlos to change their course toward the energy source. Lisa prepared her equipment to study whatever was out there. The whole crew became alert as they moved closer to the mysterious signals. As they got nearer, Jake could see that the asteroids were not normal rocks. They seemed to be connected together in patterns that looked almost like a building. The energy readings got stronger, and Amy detected what might be artificial structures. Lisa's instruments showed the objects were made from materials not found. In nature. Jake ordered the ship to move very slowly and carefully. Whatever this thing was, it was huge and clearly made by intelligent beings. The crew watched through the windows as massive shapes became visible. What they had thought were asteroids was actually an enormous construct floating in space. It was bigger than any building on Earth. The construct had smooth metal walls covered with strange symbols and lights. Long arms reached out from the central hub like the spokes of a giant wheel. Each arm was as big as a city block and seemed to have different purposes. Some had docking bays, while others had what looked like weapons. The whole structure slowly turned as it drifted through space. Jake felt both excited and worried as he looked at this amazing discovery. They had found proof that intelligent aliens existed, but he did not know if these beings were friendly or dangerous. He told Amy to try sending peaceful greeting messages while Lisa studied the construct with her sensors. Carlos checked all their weapons and shields just in case. Before Amy could send any messages, bright lights suddenly appeared around their ship. Beams of energy locked onto the Terra Nova and began pulling it toward the construct. Carlos tried to break free, but their engines were not strong enough. The alien technology was much more powerful than anything humans had built. Jake ordered his crew to prepare for whatever was about to happen. They had trained for first contact situations, but this felt different and scary. The beams pulled their ship into one of the large docking bays. Heavy doors closed behind them with loud metal sounds that echoed through the ship. They were now trapped inside the alien structure. Strange gases began flowing into the docking bay, and Jake worried they might be poisonous. But Lisa's instruments showed the air was safe for humans to breathe. Whoever had built this place seemed to know about human biology. That thought made Jake even more concerned about what they might face. Large doorways opened in the walls around them, and figures began walking out. Jake and his crew got their first look at real alien beings. They were much taller than humans, with 4 arms instead of 2. Their skin looked like it was made of crystal, and they wore elaborate armor that gleamed under the bright lights. Each alien carried weapons that seemed to be built into their arms. The lead alien was bigger than the others and had more decorative armor. It walked up to the window of their ship and spoke in a deep voice that somehow they could understand. The words came through their communication system, as if the aliens were translating their language. Automatically, the alien leader said his name was HFY, and he was a warrior of the Cathara race. He told them they were now prisoners in a place of honor and testing. According to the ancient laws of his people, he must either devour worthy opponents or find another way for them to satisfy his warrior spirit. Jake felt his heart beating fast, as he realized their situation had become very dangerous very quickly. The alien warrior was talking about eating them unless they could prove themselves worthy in some other way. This was not the peaceful first contact that Earth had hoped for when they sent out exploration ships. ZEX HAI gave them 1 full day to prepare for whatever challenge he would present. He said they would have a chance to show their worth, but if they failed, his duty required him to consume them according to Cathara tradition. The alien warrior turned and walked away with his guards, leaving the human crew alone with their fears. Looked at his team and saw the worry in their eyes, but also determination. They were explorers and scientists who had come out here knowing the risks. Now they would have to use all their skills and knowledge to survive their first meeting with an alien race. The next day would decide whether they lived or died in this strange place far from home. Dr. Lisa Parker could not sleep that night after meeting the alien warrior. She kept thinking about what HFY had said and trying to understand what kind of test they might face. Lisa had studied many different cultures on Earth and knew that warrior societies often had complex rules about honor and combat. She hoped the Cathara might be similar to human warriors in some ways. Early the next morning, Lisa gathered her team together in the ship's main meeting room. Jake Morrison sat at the head of the table, looking tired but ready to fight for their lives. Carlos Rodriguez had his tools spread out on the table, studying readings from their sensors. Amy Chun was working with her translation equipment, trying to learn more about the Cathara language. Lisa told them she had been thinking about the warrior's words all night. When HFY said he must devour them unless they could satisfy him another way, she believed this meant more than just fighting. Many warrior cultures on Earth valued different types of strength and skill. Maybe the Cathara were the same way and would accept other forms of challenge. Amy had made progress with the translation systems during the night. She discovered that the Cathara language had many different words for strength and honor. Some words meant physical power, like lifting heavy things or winning fights. But other words meant mental strength, like solving puzzles or creating new ideas. Amy thought this was very important information. Carlos had been studying the alien construct where they were trapped. His instruments showed that it was not just a simple building or prison. The structure had many different sections with equipment that could test various abilities. Some areas looked like fighting arenas, but others seemed designed for different purposes. Carlos believed the whole place was meant to measure Many kinds of skills. Jake listened to what his team had learned and felt a small amount of hope. If the Kithara valued more than just physical combat, then maybe humans had a chance. Earth people were not the strongest or fastest beings in the universe, but they were good at solving problems and working together. These might be the skills that could save their lives. During the morning, several Kithara guards came to their ship. The aliens did not speak, but they made gestures for the humans to follow them. Jake decided they should go and see what the warriors HFY wanted to show them. The team left their ship, carrying only basic equipment and their translation devices. The guards led them through long corridors filled with strange lights and symbols. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the alien armor and seemed to glow with inner energy. Lisa studied everything they passed, trying to understand how Kithara technology worked. She noticed that many decorations showed scenes of battles and victories. But Lisa also saw other images that surprised her. Some wall paintings showed Kithara working together to build amazing structures. Others depicted aliens studying stars and planets or creating beautiful works of art. These pictures told Lisa that the Kithara had not always been focused only on fighting and war. They arrived in a huge circular room with a high ceiling covered in moving lights. HFY stood in the center wearing his impressive armor and weapons. Around the edges of the room were other Kithara warriors watching silently. Jake felt like they were about to face some kind of trial with their lives, depending on the outcome. ZEX single quotes HAI spoke to them in his deep voice, and the translation system turned his words into English. He told them that Kithara law required him to test any beings who entered their sacred proving grounds. Those who failed the test would be consumed so that their strength could become part of the warrior who defeated them. But those who succeeded would be honored as worthy opponents. Lisa stepped forward and asked HFY to explain what he meant by consuming them. The alien warrior seemed surprised that she would ask questions instead of just accepting her fate. He told her that when a Kithara consumed an enemy, they gained that being's knowledge and abilities. It was considered the highest honor to have your strength live on in a great warrior. Amy used her translation equipment to ask about the different types of strength the Kithara respected. HFY's 4 eyes seemed to brighten with interest as she spoke. He explained that ancient Kithara tradition recognized 3 forms of power. Physical strength through combat was the most obvious. Mental strength through solving complex problems was also valued. And creative strength through making new things was the third type. Carlos asked about the testing facility they were in and why it had so many different areas. HFY told him that long ago the Kithara used this place to measure all 3 types of strength. But over time, his people had focused more and more on physical combat. The other tests were rarely used anymore, and many young warriors did not even know about them. Jake saw an opportunity in what the alien was telling them. He asked if they could attempt the full traditional test instead of just fighting. HFY considered this request for a long time while the other warriors whispered among themselves. Finally, he agreed, but warned them that the complete test was much more difficult than simple combat. The alien warrior explained that they would have 1 day to prepare for each of the 3 challenges. First would come a test of mental strength, where they must solve problems that had no obvious answers. Second would be a test of creative strength, where they must build something new and useful. Finally would come the test of physical strength, but this would not be about fighting. Instead, they must show they could use their bodies in skilled and coordinated ways. Lisa felt excited as she realized this was exactly the kind of challenge where humans might have advantages. Earth people were very good at working together and thinking of creative solutions. They might not be able to beat the Kithara in a straight fight, but they could show other kinds of strength. HFY assigned them quarters where they could rest and prepare. The rooms were large and comfortable, with everything they needed. Lisa noticed that the walls had more of those pictures showing Kithara engaged in different activities. She studied them carefully, trying to learn about the culture and history of these alien people. That evening, the team met to plan their strategy. Jake told them they should work together on each challenge, instead of trying to compete as individuals. Lisa would lead the mental test since she was the scientist. Carlos would handle the creative challenge with his engineering skills. Amy would help with both by using her communication abilities to coordinate their efforts. They spent hours discussing ideas and sharing knowledge. Lisa explained what she had learned about Kithara history from the wall paintings. Carlos showed them his analysis of the alien technology they had seen. Amy practiced with the translation systems to make sure they could communicate clearly during the test as they prepared for sleep that night. Jake felt more hopeful than he had since their capture. They had found a way to avoid certain death and maybe even earn the respect of these powerful aliens. But he also knew the challenges ahead would test everything they had learned and all their abilities as human beings. The next morning would bring their first real test and their first chance to show the Kithara what humans could do when working together. Jake looked at his team and saw the same determination in their eyes that had brought them all the way out here to explore the unknown parts of space. The first challenge began early the next morning when Kithara guards came to escort them to a new section of the massive construct. Jake Morrison followed behind Zex High as they walked through corridors he had not seen before. These halls were different from the others, with walls covered in complex mathematical symbols and strange diagrams that seemed to move and change as they watched. Dr. Lisa Parker studied everything around them as they walked. The symbols reminded her of some advanced physics equations, but they were far more complex than anything humans had developed. She realized the Kithara had scientific knowledge that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth technology. This made her both excited and worried about the mental challenge they were about to face. They entered a large room filled with floating platforms and holographic displays. The air shimmered with energy, and Lisa could feel a strange tingling sensation on her skin. Carlos Rodriguez looked around with wide eyes at technology that seemed almost like magic compared to human engineering. Amy Chun activated her translation equipment to make sure she could understand any instructions they received. Zex High stood in the center of the room and explained the mental challenge. The humans would be presented with a series of problems that required both logical thinking and creative reasoning. These problems had been designed to test the mental abilities of the greatest Kithara scholars, and many had never been solved completely. The team would have 6 hours to work together and provide solutions. The first problem appeared as a 3-dimensional hologram floating in the air before them. It showed a complex star system with planets that moved in patterns that seemed impossible according to human physics. Lisa studied the display and realized the planets were following paths that would normally cause them to collide, but somehow they avoided each other. Amy worked with the Yummy translation system to ask questions about what they were seeing. She learned that this star system actually existed somewhere in Kithara space and had puzzled their scientists for generations. The challenge was to figure out what force was keeping the planets in their stable but impossible orbits. Carlos approached the problem from an engineering perspective and noticed that the planetary movements created a pattern. When he traced the paths of all the planets together, they formed a shape that looked like it might have meaning. He shared this observation with Lisa, who began calculating the mathematical relationships between the orbital periods. Lisa realized that the planets were not just moving randomly, but were actually part of a massive machine. Some unknown intelligence had modified the entire star system to serve as a giant computer that processed information through planetary movements. The seemingly impossible orbits were actually the system performing complex calculations. When they shared this solution with Zexhai, the alien warrior looked surprised and impressed. He told them that Kithara scientists had studied this system for thousands of years, without realizing it was an artificial construct the human team had solved. In ours, what his people had struggled with for millennia. The second problem was even more challenging. The holographic display showed what appeared to be a disease spreading through a population of alien beings. The infection followed patterns that made no sense according to any biological principles Lisa knew. Sometimes it spread quickly through large groups, but other times it seemed to skip over certain individuals completely. Amy noticed that the beings who avoided infection all had something in common, but she could not figure out what it was. Carlos studied the environmental factors and found that the disease spread differently in various locations. Lisa analyzed the biological data and discovered that the infection was not actually a disease at all. Working together, they realized that what looked like a spreading illness was actually a form of communication. The affected beings were sharing information through what appeared to be symptoms, but was really a complex language system. The individuals who seemed immune were actually those who already knew the information being transmitted. Zex single quotes HA. I was amazed by this solution as well. He explained that this problem had been based on a real situation his people had encountered during their expansion across the galaxy. The Kithara had treated it as a medical emergency when they should have recognized it as an attempt at peaceful contact with another species. The third and most difficult problem appeared as a massive maze that filled the entire room around them. But this was not an ordinary maze with walls and passages. Instead, it was made of pure energy that constantly shifted and changed. The goal was to find a path from one end to the other while the maze transformed around them. Lisa realized immediately that this could not be solved by normal navigation methods. The maze changed too quickly for them to map it or remember the correct path. Carlos suggested that maybe they needed to think about the problem differently and look for patterns in how the energy moved. Amy used her language skills to study the energy patterns as if they were a form of communication. She discovered that the changes in the maze followed rhythms similar to speech patterns. The energy was not random, but was trying to tell them something about how to navigate through it. The team worked together to decode the message hidden in the maze movements. They found that the energy was actually providing directions, but in a language made of light and motion instead of words or symbols. By following the guidance encoded in the maze itself, they were able to find their way through successfully. Zex single quotes HA. I stood silent for a long moment after they completed the final challenge. The other Kithara warriors who had been watching began speaking among themselves in their own language. Lisa could tell from their tone that they were surprised and perhaps even amazed by what the humans had accomplished. The alien warrior finally spoke and told them that they had passed the mental challenge beyond all expectations. Not only had they solved problems that had stumped Kithara scholars, but they had done so by working together in ways his people had never considered. Individual Kithara warriors usually attempted these tests alone, but the humans had succeeded through cooperation. Zexhai explained that he was beginning to understand something important about human capabilities. The strength of their species was not in individual power, but in their ability to combine different skills and perspectives. This was a form of intelligence that the Kithara had forgotten as they focused more on personal combat. Achievements. As they walked back to their quarters, Jake felt proud of what his team had accomplished. They had proven that human thinking could solve problems that had challenged a more advanced civilization. But he also knew they still faced 2 more tests, and their lives still depended on continuing to impress these alien warriors. Lisa was excited by what she had learned about Kithara culture and technology. The problems they had solved showed her that this species had incredible knowledge, but had become limited by thinking only as individuals. The humans had succeeded by doing what came naturally to them, which was working as a team. Carlos was amazed by the advanced technology he had seen during the test. The holographic systems and energy manipulation were far beyond anything humans had developed. But he had also noticed that much of the Kithara equipment seemed designed for single users rather than collaborative work. Amy had been studying the language patterns she observed throughout the day. She was beginning to understand not just the words the Kithara used, but the way they thought about problems and relationships. This knowledge would be valuable for the challenges that still lay ahead. That evening, as they prepared for the second test, Jake looked at his team with growing confidence. They had discovered that human strengths were different from Kithara abilities, but equally valuable. Tomorrow would bring the creative challenge and another opportunity to show what Earth people could accomplish when they put their minds together. The creative challenge took place in a workshop area that was larger than an aircraft hangar back on Earth. Carlos Rodriguez stared in wonder at the walls lined with tools and materials he had never seen before. Some looked similar to human equipment, but others were completely alien in design and purpose. The air hummed with energy from machines that seemed to work without any visible power source. Zek's eye led them to the center of the workshop, where a holographic display showed the parameters of their test. The humans had 12 hours to create something new and useful that had never existed before. They would have access to all the materials and tools in the workshop, including advanced Kithara technology that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Dr. Lisa Parker examined some of the strange materials available to them. There were metals that seemed to bend light around them and crystals that generated their own energy fields. She found substances that changed their properties when touched and others that seemed to respond to thoughts or emotions. The possibilities were overwhelming, but also exciting. Amy Chun worked with her translation equipment to understand how the various alien tools functioned. Many operated through mental commands rather than physical controls. She discovered that the Kithara had developed technology that could read brain patterns and translate thoughts into mechanical actions. This opened up entirely new ways of creating and building things. Jake Morrison gathered his team together to discuss what they should try to create. They needed something that would impress the Kithara while also demonstrating human creativity and innovation. Jake suggested they focus on combining human ideas with Kithara technology to produce something neither species could have made alone. Carlos had been studying the workshop equipment and noticed something interesting. All the tools seemed designed for individual use, even the largest and most complex machines. The Kithara apparently worked alone on their creative projects, just as they did everything else. This gave him an idea for what they might build. Lisa suggested they create something that would benefit both humans and Kithara by solving a problem that affected both species. She had observed that the alien construct had some inefficiencies in its life support systems. The air recycling was adequate, but not optimal, and could be improved with human environmental science combined with Kithara technology. Amy pointed out that communication between their species was still limited despite the translation equipment. If they could build a better system for understanding each other, it would be valuable for future cooperation. She wanted to create a device that could translate not just words, but concepts and cultural meanings. Jake decided they should work on multiple projects simultaneously to show the full range of human creativity. The team split up with each person leading a different project while also helping the others. This collaborative approach was something the Kithara had not seen before and drew the attention of several alien observers. Carlos began working on a new type of construction system that could build structures by having multiple machines work together automatically. He used Kithara molecular manipulation technology, but programmed it with human concepts of teamwork and coordination. The result was a system where individual machines could communicate and cooperate to create complex buildings. Lisa focused on improving the life support systems throughout the alien construct. She combined her knowledge of Earth biology with Kithara energy technology to create hybrid systems that could support both species more efficiently. Her design included backup systems and redundancies that reflected human caution and planning. Amy developed an advanced communication device that could translate cultural concepts as well as language. She programmed it with everything she had learned about both human and Kithara thinking patterns. The device could help beings from different species understand not just what others were saying, but why they thought the way they did. Jake worked on a project that combined elements from all the others. He was building a command center that would allow mixed teams of humans and Kithara to work together effectively. The system could coordinate different species with different abilities and thinking, patterns to solve problems neither could handle. Alone Dot, as they worked the watching Kithara warriors, became more and more interested in what the humans were doing. Several came closer to observe the construction process. Lisa noticed that some seemed confused by the way the team members helped each other. Instead of working in isolation, Carlos completed his construction system first and demonstrated it by building a small structure in the middle of the workshop. The watching aliens were amazed as multiple machines worked together seamlessly to create something more complex than any single unit could have managed. The final building incorporated design elements that no individual machine had been programmed with. Lisa finished her life support improvements and connected them to the construct's existing systems. The air immediately became cleaner and more comfortable for both species. The Kithara could feel the difference, and several commented that breathing had become easier. Her hybrid system was more efficient than either pure human or pure Kithara. Technology. Amy tested her communication device with Zexhai and the other warriors. For the first time, they could truly understand human concepts like teamwork and cooperation, instead of just hearing the words translated. Similarly, the humans could grasp Kithara, ideas about honor and individual achievement in ways that made emotional sense. Jake's command center brought everything together by allowing the different projects to work as an integrated whole. The construction system could build better structures using Lisa's environmental improvements. Amy's communication system helped coordinate different species working together. The result was a facility that could serve both humans and Kithara better than anything either species had created alone. When the 12 hours ended, Zexhai and a group of senior Kithara examined everything the humans had built. They spent a long time discussing what they observed using their own language. Jake could tell from their body language and tone that they were impressed, but also puzzled by some aspects of human creativity. Finally, Zexhai spoke to them through Amy's improved translation system. He said that the humans had succeeded in creating things that were genuinely new and useful. But more importantly, they had demonstrated a form of creativity that the Kithara had lost over the centuries of focusing on individual achievement. The alien warrior explained that ancient Kithara had once worked together on great projects that spanned generations. They had built amazing cities and technologies through cooperation between many different specialists. But as their culture became more focused on personal combat prowess, they had forgotten how to combine their abilities effectively. Zexhai told them that what the humans had created in 12 hours would normally take Kithara teams months or years to accomplish. This was not because human technology was better, but because they naturally worked together in ways that multiplied their individual capabilities. Each person's strengths had reinforced and enhanced the others. The alien warriors had been particularly impressed by how the humans had combined their different areas of expertise. Carlos's engineering had been improved by Lisa's biological knowledge and Amy's communication skills. Jake's leadership had coordinated everything into a unified whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. As they walked back to their quarters that evening, Jake felt they had taken another important step toward survival. The creative challenge had let them demonstrate human innovation and teamwork in ways that clearly impressed their alien captors. But he knew the final test would be the most dangerous, since it involved physical abilities where the Cathara had obvious advantages. Lisa was excited by how well their creations had worked and how much the Cathara had learned from watching them. She believed they were not just completing challenges, but actually teaching these aliens about different ways of thinking and working. This cultural exchange might be more valuable than any of the individual projects they had built. Carlos was proud of what they had accomplished using unfamiliar alien technology. The experience had taught him that creativity was not limited by the tools available, but by the willingness to combine different ideas in new ways. Human adaptability had allowed them to master Cathara equipment and use it for purposes its creators had never imagined. Amy felt that her communication improvements were already making a difference in how the two species understood each other. The Cathara were beginning to see humans as more than just potential prey or opponents. They were starting to recognize humans as beings with valuable abilities and perspectives that could benefit both civilizations. Tomorrow would bring the final challenge and their last chance to prove they deserved to survive their encounter with the alien warriors. The final challenge took place in the original arena where Jake Morrison and his team had first met Zex High. But now the space looked different with additional equipment and obstacles that had not been there before. Jake could see that this would test their physical abilities, but not in the way he had expected. When they first arrived at the alien construct, Zex High stood before them, wearing his full ceremonial armor, which gleamed under the bright lights. Other Cathara warriors had gathered around the edges of the arena to witness this final test. Jake noticed that some of the aliens were now looking at the humans with curiosity rather than just the hunger he had seen in their eyes before. Alien Warrior explained that the physical challenge would not be about combat or fighting. Instead, they would need to demonstrate coordination skill and the ability to work together under pressure. The test would require all 4 humans to complete a complex obstacle course that was designed for beings with 4 arms and greater. Physical strength. Dr. Lisa Parker studied the course and saw immediately why it would be impossible for humans to complete individually. Some obstacles required reaching multiple controls at the same time, while others needed precise timing between different team members. The course had been designed to test Cathara abilities, but it would demand even more cooperation from humans. Carlos Rodriguez examined the mechanical aspects of the obstacles and found they could be modified or bypassed with clever engineering. But this would require perfect coordination between team members and split-second timing. One person would have to trust completely that the others would perform their parts at exactly the right moment. Amy Chan used her improved communication device to make sure they could stay in contact throughout the challenge. She also noticed that some of the obstacles seemed to respond to vocal commands in the Cathara language. Her translation skills might be just as important as anyone's physical abilities during this test. Jake gathered his team together, and they spent an hour studying the course and planning their approach. They identified the most difficult sections and worked out strategies for supporting each other through them. Each person would have moments where they depended completely on their teammates for success or even survival. The first section required them to cross a series of platforms that moved in complex patterns. A single person could not predict where the platforms would be, but a team working together could guide each other safely across. Lisa called out the patterns she observed, while Carlos calculated the timing and Amy coordinated their movements. Jake when first following the guidance from his team. When he reached the other side safely, The others followed one at a time, with each crossing made easier by the knowledge gained from watching the previous person. By working together, they turned an impossible individual challenge into a manageable team exercise. The second obstacle was a maze filled with energy barriers that would shock anyone who touched them. But the barriers moved in response to weight and pressure from multiple points. Carlos figured out that they could manipulate the barriers by having team members stand in specific locations while others moved through the safe passages that were created. Lisa discovered that some barriers responded to biological signatures rather than just physical pressure. By having different team members in different positions, they could create passages that would not exist for any individual. Amy used her communication skills to coordinate their movements so that barriers opened and closed at exactly the right times. The third challenge required them to assemble a complex device while suspended on ropes high above the arena floor. The device had components that needed to be installed simultaneously from different positions. No single person could reach all the necessary points, but 4 people working together could complete the assembly. Jake and Carlos handled the mechanical components while Lisa managed the biological elements that required her scientific knowledge. Amy coordinated their actions and monitored the device's responses to make sure everything was being installed correctly. When they finished, the device activated and projected a beam of light that illuminated the entire arena. The final obstacle was the most dangerous and required absolute trust between team members. They had to cross a bridge made of energy beams that would only remain solid if all 4 humans maintained perfect balance and timing. If any one person stumbled or moved incorrectly, the entire bridge would collapse and all of them would fall. Linked arms and moved together as a single unit across the unstable energy bridge. Jake led while Amy called out warnings about changes in the beam patterns. Carlos monitored the stability of their formation, while Lisa adjusted their speed based on the bridge's responses. Step by step, they made their way across the deadly obstacle. When they reached the other side safely, the watching Kithara warriors began making sounds that the translation system identified as expressions of amazement and respect. HFY himself seemed stunned by what he had witnessed. Never before had he seen beings complete the full challenge course through pure cooperation and mutual support. The alien warrior walked over to where the humans stood catching their breath after their ordeal. He told them that they had not only passed all 3 challenges, but had done so in ways that taught the Kithara important lessons about strength and achievement. They had shown that working together could accomplish things impossible for individuals. HFY made a formal declaration that the humans had satisfied his warrior spirit in the most complete way possible, rather than devouring them as enemies. He would absorb their knowledge and perspectives as honored allies. The ancient laws had been fulfilled, but in a way that created friendship rather than death. The alien leader explained that the word Devour in ancient Kithara tradition had originally meant to fully understand and incorporate the best qualities of others. Over time, his people had interpreted this too literally and forgotten the deeper meaning about learning from those they encountered. Jake realized that their entire ordeal had been as much about educating the Kithara as it had been about proving human worth. The aliens had needed to rediscover their own forgotten values about cooperation and different forms of strength. The humans had served as teachers as well as test subjects. HFY announced that he was inviting the humans to remain as honored guests and partners in Kithara space. Their ship would be repaired and upgraded with alien technology. In return, the humans would help establish new training programs that taught cooperation and teamwork to young Kithara warriors. Lisa was excited by the opportunity to study Kithara science and biology while sharing human knowledge with alien researchers. The exchange of information between their species could advance both civilizations in ways neither could achieve